Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. Welcome back, everyone. Very gratified that in the last, I want to say 10 years, people have been okay saying that they're going to see their therapist. Back in the day, if you would say that, pretty good chance somebody would look at you like, oh, somebody has a problem. All right. And then you would get judged. Now it's a 180 where it's like your badge of courage. It's like talking to a friend. Yep. I'll meet you after because I have an appointment with my therapist at 5 today. We're going to talk about the different types of therapy and how they may support you, what they all mean. A lot of them are acronyms for something. Honestly, I get confused over most of them. And she's going to break it down for us. She's an amazing psychologist from Virginia and has two wonderful, wonderful books that I've read. I call them workbooks for life because it's almost like your guide, your GPS for life. And she's back with us. Dr. Ann Creekmore is here. How you doing?
Good, Steve. How are you?
Very well, very well. I trying to even think of what they call traditional talk therapy. Isn't there an acronym for it or another name for it?
Psychotherapy, generally called psychotherapy.
So that'll be our starting point today. Okay. And is that just as simple as you going to a therapist who's trained and them talking with you and kind of figuring out why you react a certain way? Or, instead of me describing it, what is actually going on with traditional talk therapy?
Ideally, the first session is called an intake or clinical evaluation, which you just sometimes people think they're going to come in and just talk at the beginning and just about what's the problems in living, but really the first session ought to be really getting a history, the current symptoms bothering, the current problems in living, but a whole history about the person, and so that you can actually see if they have any kind of previous diagnoses, previous medications, previous traumas, previous anything in life. And so you get the big picture and can kind of evaluate, is this like, for example, a unipolar depression, or is this a moody depression, a bipolar type depression, because the doctors give for different things for unipolar versus bipolar. Is this actually just a PTSD current, or is this more of a complex PTSD? Is there childhood trauma, which has different defense mechanisms and different treatment protocol than just PTSD and so on. So the first session is generally like really, I give people, a lot of questionnaires, makes it quicker, in my opinion, to get it all, they write down their medication history or their, legal history, or their psychiatric history, their presenting complaints, do, Dr. Amen ADHD questionnaire for different types of ADHD, do a dissociative experience scale to see if there is a complex PTSD, DID kind of thing, spectrum going on. Basically, any type of disorders, try to get a handle, so that the second time we get together, we talk about, this is what they want to talk about. Of course, we really can start, but also these were scored and indicated maybe that you do have some ADHD. Maybe, you wondered if you did. It looks like you do. Follow up, going through the diagnostic and statistical manual of mental disorders criteria to see if that fits for these different things, and kind of give them and spend some time talking about, these are some options, treatment options for these. And so then kind of after you kind of get started in the big picture, I guess, if you will, the little picture to the big picture of the treatment plan, then you can start really talking about the different problems with some sort of context in it, and start talking about the problems in living that the person's brought in, that they want to work on, they want to get help with. And then what I do is an eclectic approach of a whole array of different therapies. So we can talk about that too.
So when you do the initial intake, and we're focusing on just traditional therapy here,
yes,
do you identify the traumas, things that have gone on? Are you already, as a practitioner, already formulating the makeup of somebody. Somebody hints about this, hints about that. In your mind, are you already saying, okay, that could be a challenge there for them. That could be something that's sitting in their subconscious that maybe they're not aware of. Is that what's going on in your mind?
Yes. Well, actually, I would have it in the initial intake and psychosocial assessment questionnaire that they fill out that I put together. And it would have something on it like, have you experienced or been exposed to any kind of aggression? In your life, like it could be, and I put in like parent, spouse, other relative, have you experienced that? Has your, what is your, family makeup? What is the family psychiatric history? Is anybody in your family had, and including extended family, been involved in drugs and alcohol? Has there been any suicide? Has there been any, psychiatric problems, anxiety, depression? And they would have filled all that out. And while, when we go over it, especially, I would be asking questions, my 1,000 questions, I call it, when I go over the intake. I would, and I see that there was some aggression, or with parents, I'll ask specifically, who was the aggression toward, and what was it? And sometimes it's just, they'll say, oh, it was verbal or emotional, mental, but sometimes it'll be domestic violence between the parents, and then the parent also abused the children, and were you abused physically as well? So I'll get all the details, and I will generally just ask if there really isn't anything there that they've put down as a specific historical information. I'll just ask, how about during your childhood, anything you would call a trauma or any major losses that have gone on during your childhood? So I'll just directly ask them and then get that all so I'll kind of have a real big picture of what, and little picture details of what they bring in, to.
So let's go deeper into some of the other therapy modalities. Your pick. I mean, I know there's CBT, there's DBT, there's all different ones. Pick one.
Well, according to the research, the most effective form of therapy is cognitive behavioral therapy, which is, I think, most therapists would be very familiar with and would use. And that stands for cognitive, means thought. Cognition really means thought. So it's cognitive, how your thoughts affect your behavior to affect your life and how it plays, and then how the outcome would be. So basically, it's, in a nutshell, it's really like kind of being aware of your negative thinking, negative thoughts, because negative thoughts lead to negative emotions. Negative emotions lead to negative behaviors. And then if you're behaving certain ways, the outcomes don't work out as well as if you're in a positive mood, positive self-enhancing thoughts. The example I often give is just that, say two people get the same job performance evaluation. It's like, just say it was a write-up, and, it's actually got some paper and it's got your name on it, and it's given to two people, but they each have their own name, but it's exactly identical. The event's identical. And it's a good job performance evaluation. But of course, it has a few criticisms and a few areas of improvement, as well. Say the first person, self-talk, their cognitions, their thoughts or interpretations or self-statements, if you will, about the report. If this person has high self-esteem, they may say, this is good, and I can see those two areas that I can work on. I'm new, and these are my areas I'm going to start working on. Or, oh, we didn't communicate on that. This is something we can get straight. I'm smart. I'm capable. I can do this, and then that's their thoughts, the cognitive part of the therapy, identifying the thoughts, their positive thoughts. Those thoughts would lead to the emotions, and would be very important in emotional regulation, so that if that person would probably feel motivated. They feel positive, like I can do this. And so they'll probably perform well on the job. And the job outcome would be a good one because they're saying, I got it, I can do it. And versus another person, just their name's different, exact same event, same report write-up, but that person has low self-esteem and might say negative, have negative cognitions, negative thoughts, and start saying negative things to themselves. They, instead of looking at the whole thing, it's a good, performance evaluation. They just hone right in on those two criticisms and go, oh, these people hate me. I'm a loser. They're going to fire me. Well, of course, those cognitions, negative self-talk, go and make them feel bad. They've lack confidence. They might be depressed or anxious or mad, and like get an attitude or feel like, well, I can't do anything, right? So what am I doing? I'm not going to do anything, or I'm all anxious, don't know what to do. In other words, that cognitions, those thoughts led to them having negative emotions, not the actual report. So how do they behave on the job? Well, maybe they give up, or maybe they're scattered, or maybe they're just got an attitude, but whatever it is, it's not going to be as good of an outcome, a job performance outcome. So that is the main focus with the cognitive behavioral therapy, and there are many different intricate kind of strategies you can use, but essentially I will get most all my clients to understand this and begin to start to catch their negative thoughts, their negative self-talk. Because if you can start from a place of love of yourself, of love of the moment, love of the present, and that you're in the situation, you're going to create a positive outcome. And if you start with thinking negatively about it, you're going to create negativity, essentially. So I would, in my book, the Love Yourself, Love Your Life book, I have an exercise where you kind of ask to take 10, 15 minutes, just go about your business, in the house or home, work, wherever you are, and just catch what you're saying to yourself. What kind of things are you saying to yourself? And your self-talk or about your world or your self-statements. And then if there, wouldn't be something you would say to a friend or a family member, then you catch it. You say, well, that's a negative thought. Like, you wouldn't say something mean like that to somebody well, then that's a negative thought. So you apply the strategy of thought stopping, where you just say, wait, I can't go there. One therapist actually said, wear a little bracelet and kind of, or a little band, don't hurt yourself, just ping it. Whenever you do that, I said, wait, stop. I can't say those negative things to myself. It's, I'm not being a friend to myself. And then you change it to put in the positive self-talk. Just like instead of saying, hey, I got a couple of criticisms, I'm going to lose my job, say, oh, yeah, well, I'm smart, I'm capable. These are some new things we're going to work on, and it's going to get even better. I can do this. Just change the negative thought into the positive, as you would say to a friend or family member, and that will lift your serotonin up. They found with the cognitive behavioral therapy that it's as effective in scientific research as actually the antidepressants.
Wow.
Because you actually raise your own serotonin when you say these things to yourself. You're increasing your positive mood neurotransmitter when you are actually doing the self-talk. Of course, we tend to be negative thinkers, so it's a job. It's something to do. I mean, when you start doing it, you might find that you're saying 300 times a day negative things, and you've got to catch them, and you got to stop them, and you got to put in the positive. So but over time, so other habit, you'll start to do it more readily. Maybe in a week or two, it'll be down to 15 times or 50 times, and but it's a natural way to raise your own, positive mood neurotransmitter, your serotonin.
Why is it? Now, this is what I've heard. Oh, and by the way, sub note, what you just said, the positive words really hit strong for me. And I'm going to share that with people because we've often heard that, how positivity works. But, to your point, how it could be even better than medication. Why is it that most of us, and I've heard this many, many times, walk around thinking, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. Or it's like the foundation that we ride on top of. And, could be not good enough for anything. But is that our conditioning growing up as kids?
Well, yeah, it definitely can be. I mean, parents can fall into the kind of, I've heard it called the parent criticism trap, that instead of like focusing on the good that the child is doing, they're trying to help the child be the best they can be, or grow or learn. And they kind of will be talking about, this is what you can improve, or you need to do it this way. You're not doing it that way, and it can be worse, of course. I mean, there can be parental verbal aggression, or mental, or abusiveness, or depending on levels of things. So, and these get internalized by children, like you're saying. I mean, what they hear about themselves, they internalize, and they start to repeat it in their minds, as to putting themselves down. And so, yeah. So the origin of negative thinking is, can stem from some traumatic experiences that children have, and then what they say to themselves or heard was said about them.
Wow. So we talked about traditional, we talked about CBT, right? What are some of the other modalities, some of the other types of therapy that you might choose to work with somebody on?
Right. Well, one that's a good one for triggers, because triggers of past kind of traumas or negative experiences that would start the person feeling, saying those negative things to themselves and feeling those negative emotions, and then going into a negative tailspin. That it can be an adjunct to psychotherapy, or as a form of psychotherapy, is EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing. And that is when you can identify that you have had some traumatic experiences or traumas. I mean, it could be anything.
Can I jump in? I've heard
Absolutely.
this a ton of times. EMDR. How does that work when somebody is getting that? Like, how does the eye movement make a difference?
Well, this originated some years back with, and I think it's Dr. Shapiro. They were working with earthquake victims who maybe even lost limbs and so on, trying to get them over the PTSD, the post-traumatic stress disorder. Mm-hmm. And this was developed where what happens with the PTSD, which people are having, and we're talking about just an incident, maybe PTSD, not to total treatment for complex PTSD or childhood repeated chronic trauma, is that the memories don't actually go into the memory banks. They stay up in the corpus callosum between the hemispheres, and are not actually getting reprocessed into your memory. They're just always fresh. So it's kind of like a person can have a flashback and feel like, they're re-experiencing it right at that moment. It hasn't. And so when you go to EMDR and you talk to the therapist and you identify some critical incidents that that still trigger you, then they pick one and you just focus on that for the session, where it's doing some things that help it actually get reprocessed into your memory banks. And like one is just the finger waving, and you have to kind of watch your fingers while you're saying it, like, oh, well, this happened. But you have to also, the client has to look at the fingers and keep watching it so that it's set to go and get processed back into the memory banks. So when they complete that session on that particular incident, then it's not fresh there, sitting there ready for finger wound to be, touched and re-triggered. It's gone into the memory banks, more like a photo from the past at that point, which what memories do. But because of the trauma, is the emotional stimulation doesn't happen. So it kind of corrects that. Wow. and helps you be able to just, be emotionally regulated around it. Mm-hmm.
I find it interesting how the eye movement can make a difference. Even in hypnotherapy, I've done this technique to hypnotize myself, or just put me into that state where I can think more, or I want to make a change. But just taking your eyes and looking up into your eyelids or eyebrows and just staring for a minute or 30 seconds get you into that state. So it's so amazing how that even, and same thing with what you just talked about.
Right. It's nice that sometimes just non-invasive, natural things can be so healing, right? I mean, that you don't have to, when you've had trauma, fear that you're going to go into therapy and you're going to have to talk about these horrible things that maybe you've never talked to anybody about and feel all these terrible, painful feelings. I mean, they're just ways, like you mentioned, the hypnosis as well. I do that. I didn't learn the EMDR because I had a colleague that she did it. So when she had a client that needed the hypnosis for all gamut of things, whatever that might be, anxiety, depression, smoking, whatever, she'd send to me for the little adjunct therapy, and then I'd send to her anybody I felt they needed EMDR. And unfortunately, she just retired, so I might have to just take EMDR again. But I do it through the hypnosis, because a lot of times when you are in that nice relaxed state and you give the person the suggestion, because they're ready to absorb it, and if it fits with their value, give them the suggestion that whenever they have this negative memory of this trauma, that they're going to feel relaxed, they're going to feel confident, they're going to, they're going to remember it as if it is in a photo album from the past. In other words, it's a suggestion to help that EMDR process to actually occur, reprocessing to occur that way. Yeah.
And I've done all different types of that therapy. But to your point, there was one time I did timeline regression, which is hypnotherapy, a form of, and I didn't even talk about anything. It was just basically think back to the first time you remember being sad, and it was to clean up, eradicate, if you will, 5 negative emotions. Think back to the first time you remember ever being frustrated. First time you ever. So I didn't even have to share with the practitioner anything, nothing. She knew nothing, and I believe it worked.
Congratulations! Absolutely.
How do we find you? Best way?
Yes, sure. Best way is through Psychology Today, and just look me up, Ann Creekmore, and I have my link right on there, and you can just click it, and it'll take you right to my practice, phone numbers, emails, everything.
Beautiful. Always great talking with you. I'm glad we went down this road today just to let people know just some of the things that are out there. When somebody says the word therapy, they think it's, I don't want to say just you talking to a therapist, which is great. There's so much more out there. And
absolutely. We only scratched the surface. We could talk again.
I know. I know. Maybe another time we get together. Thanks again.
Yeah. Thank you, Steve.
We'll be right back.
Hi. I'm Dr. Ann Creekmore. I want you to know that you have the power to shine your light and be a magnificent, authentic person that you are in your mind, body, and spirit, and to have a wonderful, fulfilled life. I have written several books, but the one I'm sharing about is Love Yourself, Love Your Life. I want you to have that book so you can start healing the emotional wounds of the past and release any negative subconscious beliefs that are holding you back so you can become the whole, fulfilled, happy person you're meant to be. Please feel free to contact me. You can find me on Psychology Today, which links into my website. Thank you. Blessings and love.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.